Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Lewis, live in the News 13 studios for this 13 Now presentation. We're joined by Bay District School Superintendent Bill Husfelt. We're going to talk a little bit about, it's a little bit about everything, actually. So if you have any questions, please just go to our Facebook page and let us know what's on your mind, and we'll talk a little bit about, like I said, a little bit about everything. Superintendent Husfelt, we appreciate you being here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Appreciate it.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the topics that you actually wanted to speak about today was school security. I know that you and the sheriff just ended up doing a tour of the secondary schools, the middle schools and the high schools, talking to every single student. Tell me about that, how that went, because that's something you used to do a long time ago, right?
Right. We did it before the hurricane, obviously. Go around and talk to schools about school safety and about what, if they see something, say something. And it's just been ratcheted up. I think, what happened in Uvalde and, of course, Broward County and Newtown and all these terrible tragedies. We just want to remind our students that we want them to help us to keep our schools safe. And almost in all these incidences where guns have been used in schools, some of the students knew something might be a problem. So we just depend on them to help us keep them safe. And we had some good conversations about posting crazy things on social media about, a picture with a gun while they think it's funny, it's not, and various threats. And while we don't believe they intend to do anything, we take them all very seriously. And unfortunately, it's cost a lot of students their high school or middle school career. We remove them for 2 years. And it's a major part of our school safety plan is to make sure they cooperate with us to help them be as safe as they can be at schools.
I think one of the messages that my understanding that you were trying to impart to students last week was, hey, we're going to take this very seriously, and if you violate the rules, you will be punished.
That's right, and we told them. We've got in place, there's 5 different alternatives we've got depending on what you do with regards to school threats. Whether it's talk about bringing a gun, bring a BB gun that looks like a gun. We've even had a student bring a bow and arrow to school this year. I mean, all these things, while you and I can laugh.
A real bow and arrow.
Yes. I don't know if he thought he was one of the Avengers or what, but the challenge is that, look, I know that the frontal lobe of males does not mature to the average age of 25. Now, that's the average age. And that's one of the things we talked about. If ever in some, right. Our wives and girlfriends would question that, right? But our challenge is to get them to understand how serious these things are, because inevitably we'll get threats 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night because someone posted something on social media that's, scary. Mm-hmm. And parents are very, very concerned about their children being safe at school, as they should be. And so we have to make sure our students understand that we're not going to take these lightly, and we will use every possible means to correct that behavior, whether it's removing them from school, having them arrested and charged, whatever we've got to do to make our schools as safe as can be. And that was the main bulk of the conversation.
Yeah, it's not only just punishment at school, but you just mentioned it, having them arrested. They're facing possible legal consequences.
And depending on the age and what the statement is or whatever, but yes, there's not a parent out there that doesn't want this happening at school unless it's the child that's doing it. Then they don't want us to punish them the full extent. But parents,
Sure.
by and large, totally support this. They are all on board with this. And so we have got to get students to understand these things aren't funny, they won't be tolerated, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that our schools are as safe as possible. But again, and this is why I'm asking parents out there, talk to your students about these things. Get them to understand the seriousness of this, because the mistakes you make in any kind of threat cannot be overcome just by saying you're sorry. This world that we live in today is not the same world you and I grew up in, or many of our parents today. And so we're just going to do everything we can to keep our schools safe and make sure we are focused on trying to prevent as much as we can before it even starts.
I've had discussions with a lot of these younger reporters that I have in the room behind me here. And I talk about when you and I were at Bay High School, and it was no big deal for a lot of the guys to come with shotguns in the gun racks in their pickup trucks on
Oh,
campus.
yeah.
Nobody thought twice about that in those days, but we're not in that world anymore.
No, we are not in that world anymore. And it's unfortunate for a lot of students, and I even apologize to the students. I hate that they're living in a world where everything they're doing is being recorded and is circumspect, but that's the world they live in. And I tell them, you're not going to get away with anything. And unfortunately, the things they do are there forever. And I showed them, I don't know, 10, 12 headlines of young people getting arrested, getting in trouble for stupid things or very terrible things. And I said, once it's out there, it's there forever now. People will be able to Google whatever you did when you were a teenager if you're not careful, and you don't want that to deal with the rest of your life. And so we talked to them about that.
That's a nice segue into the other problem that was discussed some during your tour last week, which is social media, TikTok challenges, things like that. How big of a problem is that?
It's huge, especially when there are stupid things like lighting hand sanitizer on fire or doing something that's causing chaos in the schools. And so these challenges, they get on there and they think, oh, that's cool, I want to try that. And they're not looking, and again, they're looking right here, they're not looking at the consequence, and the consequence can be huge depending on what it is. And so again, we've got to have the parents step up and get involved and guide our students to understand what they can and cannot do. You know, if you want to do these things at home, that's one thing. But when you come into school and you light something on fire or you blow something up, even though it's not a big explosion, that's a huge thing for a school when you've got 1,000, 2,000 students in it and all the employees and everybody else, and you get first responders and everybody else involved. I mean, and we've been dealing with these things. Here's, and I'm gonna take what you're using, but I'm gonna tell you what I think long-term is gonna happen. I think these social media companies that are providing these outlets and are just causing a lot of this disruption, I believe that parents are going to get enough, and there's going to be a lawsuit eventually because of what they've done to children's lives, a lot of this, just like the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry knew for years what they were doing to teenagers, boys and girls, and the impact it was having on them. I have no doubt that Facebook and Instagram and I can't even name all of them. I have no doubt they know what they're doing to our teenagers today. And there's going to be a reckoning one day. They're going to have to be responsible for it because they do know what they're causing. And it just befuddles me the number of parents that don't know what their students are doing on these social media sites.
Let's talk a moment or two about your teacher situation. We sang praises of you about a week and a half, 2 weeks before the school year started because you held a job fair and you filled all these positions. Like, hey, this looks great. Looks like they're gonna be all up to full staff, and you were pretty much up to full staff when school year started. And now we've had some teachers already bail out, already resign. Talk to me a little bit about that. Why did that happen?
We've had over 24 teachers to date since the first day of school resign, and there's various reasons. Some of them are moving or different things like that, but the largest percentage of them, they were just overwhelmed. You know, I think that a lot of people think, well, I went to school, so I'm sure I could teach, and even if they're qualified and they've got a bachelor's degree, teaching is very, very difficult. It is a challenging job. It can be overwhelming to those that aren't ready for it. And that's the challenge. I think that the teachers we have that have the training in education and have done their internship and have got the experience, they kind of know what's out there and what's going to happen. But and this happened, this is a personal experience I had when I was principal. I was a high school principal for 12 years. I had an engineer that wanted to come in and retired and wanted to teach. He lasted 2 weeks. A great guy, walked in and said, Bill, I just can't handle this. This is, I can't do this. It's much more difficult than whatever I thought it was going to be. And I think that's the kind of issue we're having is teaching is difficult to begin with. And in today's world, it's much more difficult because every one of the students has one of these, and they're videoing and posting and ignoring and causing all kinds of other issues with it. And the teachers are just overwhelmed, especially those without any teaching experience.
So what's the solution?
The solution is going to be long-term. The solution is not immediate. I've never felt as I got to be careful how I word this. I've never felt as helpless to help the schools as I have with this particular situation. Even after the hurricane, I knew we had a plan and we could put things in place and open schools up. And we did that spread over 3 weeks, and we could see what we needed to do. With this, there's not going to be 2 Greyhounds driving in town full of teachers. And we need probably 40 or 50 teachers right now. And it's going to take years for the United States, because this is just not a Bay County problem. This is a problem across the nation. It's going to take years to build up the College of Education capacity to where they can fill in for the losses all the districts are experiencing. And until that time, we're going to have to come up with various and sundry ways to fill them. And a lot of that right now is trying to get college graduates without the experience to come in and try it. And again, as I said, it's not easy.
It's not just a money problem. You can't throw money at this, can you?
No, but what we have done is, and a lot of teachers, and I thank the teachers for doing this, we are paying a supplement to any teacher in the secondary level right now that gives up their planning period to teach an extra class. Now, can you imagine that, teaching for 7 straight hours? And that's what many of our teachers are doing, because they know we don't have any choice, and they're willing to do that, and I appreciate them doing that. But that still doesn't fill the needs we have for our autistic classes, our special needs classes, our elementary classrooms. Well, I never, ever in my wildest dreams thought that we'd be at this point in a school year and need a couple dozen elementary teachers still. I mean, and we don't have them. We've got to have them. We've got to figure out a way to solve that, and we're banging our heads against the wall trying to figure out what we can do to fix that problem. At the same time, though, Tom, we're growing. So every day we're needing more teachers. We don't have enough to fill what we've got, but our capacity of students is increasing. So this problem's not going to be fixed anytime soon. I wish I had a magic answer for it, but you know what we're doing, we're trying to make sure that those that are interested in it, that have a bachelor's degree, we're trying to really get in and help them and guide them and let them know, be patient with it. I talked to a group of about 25 this morning that are just now starting, and told them, don't give up on it. It's a rewarding occupation, but you're not going to walk in there and feel good about yourself after the first couple weeks. I mean, it can be very taxing and overwhelming, but we're trying to put enough supports in place to help them.
Let's talk a little bit about, so I want to pivot back over to the security problem, or the security concerns or issues. Are our campuses in a good position, equipment-wise, with security cameras, the things that we really need to keep an eye on the kids and make sure that they're safe?
Yes, we have, and not only the campus, but even buses. We have up to 6 cameras on every school bus, and we have the entranceways covered. I'd say 90% of our campuses are covered solidly with camera systems, and the ones that don't have them, we're getting them installed right now. And the neat thing that we've added is that Sheriff Ford, his command center, they have access to all our school cameras that we have the ability to get them to them. So they have immediate ability to respond and see things as they're happening in real time. And so, yes, I would say our systems are up and running. We have installed secure entryways into every school. We have got safety protections in places that the general public doesn't know about and we don't talk about because we don't want to give the bad guys any information.
Sure.
And so all these things add up, but the key is this, and I said this earlier, if the students or parents find out something, they need to let us know right away. We have made it a big push for all of our employees to understand how important it is to lock up behind them, lock everything behind them, no matter what, how insignificant, how small, lock it. And it's challenging because the elementary teachers, they don't want to lock their doors because they want their kids to be able to go in and out. But then again, you say, okay, do I want to do that or do I want to lock the door? And the answer is you got to lock the door because you don't want to be that one that didn't lock the door and God forbid something happened. Right. Now the likelihood, and Sheriff Ford kept talking about this, the likelihood of something happening is very, very small. But you still don't want to chance it. We don't want to take a risk and not have everything locked up like it should be. Now you're going to see a gate unlocked somewhere or a fence opening somewhere, then we're going to address that as quick as we find out about it. So if you see those things, let us know. But the world we live in today is not the school you and I went to. I can tell you that.
No, it certainly is. Well, we didn't have fences around the schools.
No, we didn't. I remember when they started doing that, everybody was mad about it.
Yeah, sure. Because, I mean, used to a kid could go to the playground on the weekends and use the basketball goals or anything else. And now, of course, everything's locked up. It's just, like you said, it's not the world that you and I grew up in, that's for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the police officers or the security force that you have employed with the school district as opposed to the school resource officers. We still have a school resource officer program, right?
Oh, yeah, it's divided. All the elementary schools are covered by our police force. And I'm going to tell you, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, but I'm serious too. We tell our police officers that are with the kindergarten through fifth graders, 100% of their job is to protect those little kids. That's what their job is. Everything's about protect those little kids. Now, in the secondary level is all the sheriff's deputies. Now, it's 50-50 because some of those kids in there cause some of the problems. So those officers in those secondary schools, they have to deal with the students in there as much as the outside concerns. And so we've got a great partnership with Sheriff Ford and his deputies, the SRDs. They're amazing. They have great relationships with them. Even the elementary level they do, in the secondary level. And so those relationships are real, and they add to the safety because the students and parents and the school personnel trust them and lean on them to help and understand the importance of their job. But I think another layer that we don't talk about a lot, but we need to remind those people out there that want to do our children harm, we have guardian program in place too. Now, I'm not going to tell you how many, but we have, the sheriff has put that program in place for years, and they train. Let's just put it this way. There's a large number of guardians out there that are armed and have been trained over 140 hours of training to be able to carry a weapon on campus. It's a blind security step that we have to give our schools that extra level and layer of protection. And we're glad we have that. We're grateful for that.
And these are employees, right?
Oh, yes. Every one of them
teachers,
employees. There's no volunteers.
Custodians,
teachers,
whatever.
Custodians,
right?
administrators. If they're at the school. Now, this is not a district level thing. I would not qualify because this is just about the schools. And so these folks, they get they have, first of all, it's 104 hours. So they spend all summer long, the summer they get trained, doing that training. They get one $500 supplement one time, and that's it. But they don't just get trained once. Sheriff Ford, they have requirements they have to go and do, just like the
update
deputies
their training,
do.
sure,
yes,
yeah,
to be recertified.
Right.
And so it's extensive, and Sheriff Ford's excited about that opportunity he has to work with these individuals, and we just know this. Who does not want to have an extra layer of protection for their child on that campus? Sure. And I know this. I would think almost every teacher or administrator out there would stand between someone with a gun and a child at any moment they had. So why not give them a chance to protect themselves?
You would hope so. You would hope so. I think we found out, we've said, kind of hearing some scary stories out of Texas about people that were in a position to do something and didn't, which is...
They were on the outside.
And
we're talking about the ones on the inside.
The one on the insides, absolutely, right. Absolutely. Would it be safe to say, Bill, that at least every school has at least one guardian in it?
Yeah, I would say at least one.
At least
close
one.
to
Okay,
it.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I know I won't press you anymore on that. We actually found out that the training was going on this summer, and we just wanted to go out and not even show the people that were taking the training, but do a little. No, couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been to the training, and it's serious.
Yeah.
It's not just sitting around talking. I mean, they go through the same training that a law enforcement officer has to before they can be hired.
For firearms.
Yes. And well, not just firearms, all of it. I can't remember profiling, so that they understand that they can't profile and what to look for and what not to look for, not to be judgmental, but be careful. I mean, it's so layered in safety. It's just not about learning how to carry a gun. It's about how to be careful carrying a gun and to make wise choices and decisions. They get out on the range, and you've seen it in the TV shows, movies, where they come around the corner and you have to decide what to react to.
Whether it's a bad guy or a good guy.
Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, all this. And the individuals that have gone through this training, it's men and women that do this, they are amazing in the sacrifices they've made to be able to do this.
A lot of people commenting. And I'd like to remind you, you could, like I say, go to our Facebook page and you could submit a question. We'd be more than happy to ask. Mostly what we've gotten today is comments, and a whole lot of comments are about guardian angels. Guardian program can mean the difference between life and death. I'm so glad they're there. So there's a lot of people that are real interested in that program. Let's talk a little bit about some of the state laws now, the legislation, excuse me, that some have been passed that you've had to institute. There's the parental rights bill
legislation.
I don't want to call it "Don't Say Gay." That's what most people know it by. But the parental rights. I mean,
I'm not going to say that because I don't want DeSantis pointing in my face.
Really,
it doesn't say that.
I got that. But I mean, you haven't really gotten the full guidance from the state on that yet, have you?
No, but we kind of understand what it is, and I think everyone knows we're in a very conservative, very understanding community, and we want parents to be involved in these things anyway.
Sure.
I was a high school principal for 12 years, and my guidance counselors knew, look, have you told the parent? Have you told the parent? Have you told the parent? I'm a father of 3 daughters. I didn't want somebody counseling my child about something that was. It's one thing you talk about school and courses, but about life, that's my responsibility as a parent. And that's the way most of our parents feel. And so we've had these conversations with our counselors, we've had these conversations with administrators and the teachers, and they understand that we are not going to act as the parents for children when they have parents that need to be involved. And we're sticking with that. We're not changing that. So we totally support that.
You're an involved parent.
Yes.
Sadly, there's a lot of parents that aren't.
You are right, but does that mean that that parent gives up that right? Now,
no.
Now
No. I'm not. In fact, I'm not even talking about that on this particular topic. I'm talking about in general. You've got a lot of parents. It's a lot of the discipline problems that we've talked about. Again, parent involvement might have solved some of this.
Now that's the topic we need to spend probably the next 20 minutes talking about. I would say, and look, I know somebody's going to get mad. They're going to put on Facebook, look, I'm 64 years old. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Our biggest discipline problems are because the students aren't controlled at home.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come out and say it.
Yeah.
If you will teach your child how to behave, they won't have any problems at school. But the students we have the biggest discipline issues with, they act the same way at home. And you let them act like that at home. And here's the thing that Sheriff Ford and I were trying to convince the students. Look, we're about educating all of you. We want all of you to get great education. But if you try to stop someone else from having an education, then we're going to find somewhere else for you to go because we don't want you here interrupting the educational process. And that's the thing that most people get frustrated about, is that those children that have decided because they were allowed to do it at home that misbehavior is all right and they can act, or what was it, show the fool or show off or whatever.
Act the fool.
Act the fool. That's what it was. You can act the fool because you get to do it at home.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not proper. It's hurting everybody else's chance from having the educational day that they need to continue to learn and grow. And so what we've done, because of COVID, because of the hurricane, and we've got mental health counselors and wellness counselors all over the district now helping, we've said, okay, COVID's over with as far as you being scared about it. We've pretty much trust the medical profession where we are with that now. You're here to learn. If you don't want to learn and you're not going to cooperate and allow others to learn, then we're going to find somewhere else for you to go and move you out of this school. Now it doesn't mean the first time they get in trouble we're kicking them out, and that's what some parents want. But they did that to my kid, get him out. Well, no, we want to do it with grace and compassion because, again, that frontal lobe's not working for all of them at the same pace. But we did let them know that we're cracking down and there are other places for them to be educated if they can't behave themselves where they're at.
We've got a question here from, looks like a Joe Kennedy. How is vape being handled? What are the rules? It's just not allowed, right?
It's not allowed. And it is a bigger problem than we ever imagined it would be. and they put things in the vape, THC and things.
I was going to say, how much of it's drug use as opposed to just nicotine?
Well, it's both.
Of course, nicotine is drug, but
right.
a legal drug at this point.
It takes 2 weeks for a teenager to get addicted to nicotine. 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Again, that's another thing that these companies that do all this, they're going to have to answer one day. But we had 2 cases last week at the same time, 2 not related. Both of the students said somebody put something in their food. I think you guys reported on one of them, and they dug into it. The schools did their due diligence with the officers and dug into it. Both of them took a hit off a dab pen. Both of them with THC in it. The kids lied and said that somebody put something in their food. We got to the bottom of it. But what we try to convince the students is, when you do that, when you give a dab pen to somebody else, THC, you are now you are being charged with distribution drugs on school campus.
Wow.
That's what we do. So you're out of there. We don't tolerate that. And that's one thing. If you did it yourself, then we've got another process and education, all that. But if you do that to someone else, I mean, what parent wants their kid having to go in an ambulance to a hospital for something that they didn't have on them that you brought to school to give to them? And so Joe's right, and I know Joe, but Joe's right. It is a bigger problem than we ever thought it would be. And unfortunately, too many of these students are getting these from their parents. That's where they're getting them from. You can't go buy these anywhere else. Kids can't just walk in and get these things.
With consent, or they think they're stealing them from the parents, or who knows?
I think it's a combination of both, but I think a lot of it's consent. And why I say this is because it's what I hear from the principals.
Well, let's seg into the most serious and significant drug problem this entire nation faces right now, fentanyl, and how easy that is to disguise by putting it in something else.
Just touching it. Let me tell you a story, and this is scary, but the schools are working really hard to find the students that are missing. They didn't enroll or they didn't come back. We had no record request from another school. We had some school personnel at one of our elementary schools go visit a home, and they leaned up against the door and were trying to look in the window and trying to figure, and they were touching all kinds of things. And this is the part I'm a little vague on, but someone, law enforcement officer or something, said, hey, that's a fentanyl house. Get away from there. Don't touch anything. So then all these people that could have been exposed to fentanyl, they have to go and wash and clean themselves.
Decontaminate.
And so that's scary, but that's the world we're living in right now. And like you said, the fentanyl, it's dangerous. In fact, one of those dab pen students said they got it from a brownie, and everybody was afraid it was fentanyl in the brownie, and so everybody was freaking out and trying to find the brownie, and the student said, no, he got a hit off my dab pen. I mean, it's, and I laugh not because it's fun. I laugh because
it's serious.
This is what the schools are dealing with.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with education. Yeah. This is, all these things are brought in from the outside to us, and then we've got to fix them. And I don't know how we fix that. I honestly don't. I don't know how we stop teenagers from getting dab pens, how we stop teenagers from bringing their vape pens. I don't know how we stop all these things. It's overwhelming to many of our schools right now.
It's difficult to do, short of, frisking the child when they come on campus and that sort of thing. I don't know. You're right.
Trust me.
I don't know
they'll
how
hide
you do
it.
that.
They'll find a way to get it on if they
I don't know how you do that either. I really don't. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the problems that you were dealing with last year that don't seem to be a problem this year. At least we haven't heard about it. Maybe people have just gotten used to it and they're not complaining anymore. But you had to change around the bus schedules last year because of a number of reasons, but I think bus driver shortage was part of it. Has that settled down now? Were you able to expand back to the old schedule, or
we've kept, in fact, everybody in the state's doing what we're doing now because they were having the same problem. You got to remember, we were a year ahead of almost everything because of the hurricane.
Right.
So we were having personnel shortage the year before the pandemic because of the hurricane. So no, we have not changed back. We would love to change back. And I've had many conversations, and the parents I've talked to, once we chatted, they understood, look, I don't like it, but I do understand. There's not any business in town or any manager in town that I've talked to that doesn't have an employee shortage.
No kidding.
And so we can't find enough employees. We can't find enough bus drivers. We have, I want to say, 93 routes. And we have 93 bus drivers, what we had last week. And we'll have anywhere from 6, 7, 8 of them out any given day. So that causes chaos. But that's without implementing, okay, we're going to transport everybody inside of 2 miles.
2 miles, yeah.
So we don't. So 2 miles is the limit. And some parents, it's just, I know it's unfair to them and it's frustrating. But what I've told them, I said, look, the minute we can get more bus drivers, we'll go back to it. But we can't. And unfortunately, I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to change that anytime soon. We just don't have the ability to find bus drivers to alleviate the problems that it's caused.
Got a question here from a fellow named Joshua Pastana, it looks like. I'm a former Air Force recruit. I used to do high school visits. Is that still a thing? Does the military still come and recruit?
Oh, yeah, they come. They mainly come during lunchtime, so they can go in the cafeteria and talk to students.
Yeah.
I think we had 24 or 25 students join the military last year, the graduation classes that we were at. It's still a great, viable option. You know, there are three things that most students, the majority of them do. They either have a job and go right to work, they go in the military, or they go to college. I mean, college or technical center, like Haney Technical College. And so that's still a very good option. And all the ROTC programs in all the schools, you know, we now have all branches but the Coast Guard recognized in our schools. We have Naval, we have Air Force, we have Marines, we have Army. I said all of them, right? I think I covered all. Everybody but Coast Guard. And so,
well, the new space branch, but
we don't have that one yet. But we'll see. I don't know if anybody has that, if that's
Space
even available.
Force,
but Space Force, but yeah, that'll be interesting. Somebody's watching. Hey, we need to do that first. But if you ever go to the schools and see those ROTC classes, it's amazing how cool they are and how much they love being a part of that group and how much fun they have together. And those retired colonels or majors or lieutenants or gunnies or whatever that are over those programs do an amazing job with those students. It's a fun program to watch.
You mentioned the hurricane several times. Let's talk about that. I mean, this, as I recall, this school district took about a $400 million, $500 million hit with damages to buildings. What's the status with construction? Are most of them back to normal now, or?
I would say they're most back to normal, but you know, we lost gym at Bay High that we'll never put back together just because the FEMA wouldn't give us what it costs to do it.
The newer gymnasium?
The older gym. The one you and I were in.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
That's gone now. It's torn down,
That's
right?
what I'm saying. We'll never get that back.
Yeah.
And there are facilities like that. We just opened Patterson back up, which I'm excited about. And here's the thing, though, Tom. We haven't caught up with FEMA in the FEMA process. It's nightmarish. You've seen what the city of Panama City's gone through.
It's amazing.
And they had everything documented, everything. They even had FEMA supporting it. And so it's extremely frustrating. But past that, we are mostly caught up. We're just in the process of trying to get reimbursed from FEMA. We are on the horizon of building 2 or 3 schools in the next, probably, I would say, 5 to 6 years. This district's going to have to do that just because of the growth that keeps going. The board is in the process. They approved us to move forward with borrowing approximately $64 million to add a large 2-story building at Bozeman for the growth up there. It's just busting at the seams. Merritt Brown, Tommy Smith. There's a lot of these kind of projects that we're going to do to soften that expansion that we're going through. But we're going to have to build another school out at the beach. You know, we just opened one. But there's no doubt we're going to need another one in the next 5 years out there. If you just drive around like I do to all the places, you see. And
we're talking about elementary or a K through 8?
It's probably
a
K-8.
Yeah, K-8.
That's
Is that the
what
trend
I would
now?
suggest.
I mean, do you think all of our schools are going to end up being K-8?
The ones that are K-5, it's hard to turn them into K-8s because they don't have the space they would need for K-8. But I would say any new school, my recommendations would always be to the board to make a K-8. Parents like it. Parents are scared to death of that transition between elementary and middle school. They are just, they're warriors about it. And so it was like that back when my kids were in school. But that's the smart way to go. There's still a lot of capacity out there at Arnold. Walsingham is growing, and they'll continue to grow. Walsingham Academy out the beach, but the west end of the beach and what's going on up in 79 in the next couple of years, it's going to blow the roof off everything out there.
Let's talk a little bit about Everett. I know you've got growing pains there because you put all those kids into Rutherford, and it's difficult. We talked about the K through 8 being maybe a good solution, but
Mm-hmm.
the 6 through 12 is probably not your best solution, I wouldn't think.
No, it really isn't.
Yeah.
But the part there is Rutherford will be so small without 612 that financially it would be hard to survive, and so that's the reason.
Won't that increase once the Tyndall gets reopened again, or do we know?
Do you know where the people that are going to work at Tyndall are going to live?
I have no idea.
Well, they're not going to live in the Springfield area. From everything, if you look at the maps we're looking at, and
But
I'm not saying
Callaway is
Springfield's not
booming.
growing.
Callaway, they're putting housing in Callaway like you wouldn't believe.
Callaway is
Yeah.
booming, but Panama City is booming on the north end.
Right.
All the area near the Dam Road, 390,
Right.
389, that's where, it's just booming out there.
So you think there's a school in the future up there?
I think there's probably going to be, and I won't be superintendent when that happens, but you've got to start looking for property now because that's where the growth is. And you're right, Callaway is growing. But if you go, you'll be shocked if you saw the numbers we saw and what's going on down 77. I mean, it's just thousands of residential housing units out there. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm excited for the growth, but at the same time, I'm glad I'm not going to be superintendent when it all happens because they're going to be chasing all over the place trying to figure out where to put them all.
Well, let's talk about Everett. What's going to happen with that campus? And I'm assuming that school's not going to reopen.
No, we want it to be
You
K,
think?
but the population, there's not enough elementary population there right now. If you compare the unit orders, I forget what the exact terminology is, but if you compare the housing orders for that area versus every other area I've talked about, it's very minimal. It is very minimal. And so
Tyndall people are not going to those areas to live.
No, I don't see some of them are going to live in Callaway, I'm sure. But I mean, the houses they're building, the apartments and all of D.R. Horton, they're not building over in that area like they are everywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, just go anywhere, and it's just booming everywhere. Go to Southport. Like I said, Southport 77, 231, that's where, now excluding the beach, because I already said the beach, but those are the areas that are bursting right now.
Yeah, interesting. What else would you like to talk about today, sir?
Again, I just want to remind the parents to please talk to their children. Hear something, say something is a good catchy phrase, but the more conversations you have with your children about safety and how they act and what they say on social media will prevent so many problems for you down the road. And we've got a great network of parents that do watch what's on social media and let us know when they see something. And the sheriff's department is like that. Once we get a threat or a hint of a threat, I can tell you, they have people work 24 hours straight through and work through these things so that we know when we open school up next morning, they've already addressed the threat. And 99% of the time, Sheriff Ford, in addition to that, will have extra officers there just to let everybody know we're here, everything's fine, everything's calm. We will never open a school if we believe there's a viable threat. Every threat we've ever dealt with was just some kind of internet thing, somebody's just being goofy. But as Sheriff Ford said to every one of the students when he talked, we're not going to ignore them. We're going to treat all threats as real, and you're going to suffer the consequences from them. But we're grateful none of them have turned out to be true.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean we're going to ignore them. And so we can't. In today's world, you can't make that one mistake.
Yeah, can't afford to, as you said, in today's world, that's for sure. Bill, thanks very much for dropping by.
I appreciate the time.
it. Anytime you want to come by, you're more than welcome to drop by and share whatever it is that's on your mind with the folks in our audience. And we appreciate you tuning in here for this 13 Now episode with Superintendent Bill Husfelt. I appreciate it. Join us again tonight at News 13 at 5 and at 6 o'clock tonight and 10 o'clock tonight for a wrap-up of everything that's going on. Until then, have a great afternoon.